Well, welcome to Train Like a Champion Rabbit Clinic. As I said, my name is Michelle Zahn. A little about myself. I have raised rabbits my whole life. I was a 4-H'er for 8 years. I'm currently the club manager of the Hill G. Louise 4-H Club in Wharton County. I'm a leader for many different projects in 4-H, and I'm an officer for our Wharton County Parent Adult Leaders Association. I was the president for 2 years, and I'm currently the treasurer. I have 2 daughters. Zoe is age 19. She was a 4-H'er for 10 years. She graduated in 2019, and she's currently a leader and attending Wharton County Junior College, and she's pursuing a degree in fashion design. And my daughter Leslie is 16. She's a junior at El Campo High School. She's been in 4-H for 9 years and was a Clover kid before she could be. Both my girls have raised many projects, rabbits being a big part of it. As I said earlier, I've raised rabbits my whole life. My dad actually got us into raising rabbits. He raised rabbits. He started raising rabbits when he was in high school, and there really hasn't been a time in my life when we've been without a rabbit somewhere on the properties. I don't consider myself an expert, but I do have lots of information. I love to share what I know, and there's always room to learn more because I learn more all the time. I guess let's start with our facilities. Our cages for your rabbits are actually very important. A standard cage is about 30 by 30 by 18, for a single adult rabbit. If you're going to do like show rabbits, I know lots of people kind of question, do I keep my rabbits in the same cage? Do I need them in an individual cage? Do I need them in, 2 to a cage? Your breeder kind of recommends what you're doing. We breed our own, so ours usually stay with their mom unless, until they're really older, and then we'll move them around depending on their weights, which we'll talk about more later. If you're going to do a single cage for your rabbit, your cage could be about 24 by 30 by 18. All wire cages are recommended because when you have wood and stuff, it can cause their waste to not fall through and to discolor. That's kind of going to our next point. Our floor wire size is very important. You kind of see the picture over here on the side. Our cage has what we call baby saver. So this isn't the floor, but this is the same wire that is on the floor. But your floor wire should be 1 inch by 1/2 inch. This allows like the rabbit poop and the urine to go through. I know that we had some people at our fair in Wharton County in the past that had some issues with sore hocks and stuff. And when we did talk to them about it, they used the smaller, like 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch wire. And when the rabbits would urinate, the liquid didn't go through the wire. It kind of held into the wire, and it would get on the bottom of their feet, and it would cause the sore hocks and their fur to get yellow and all of that, and it's just kind of yucky. The next thing that I wanted to talk about with your cages is your feeder and watering system. We like to get the feeders that you cut the little hole in the side of the cage and you hang it on the outside so you can dump your feed in and the rabbits can get to it. You can also use crocks for feeding. A lot of times I don't really care for crocks, whether it's for water or for food, because the bunnies will play in it. Sometimes they pee and poop in it and the feed gets yucky and the water gets yucky. And when it's water in there, their fur gets wet and they turn, get kind of yellow. But there are some breeders that absolutely live by crocks and think it's the best thing. So, you've got lots of opinions going on. For your watering options, you do have about 3 options. You could do the water bottles that are hung on the cage. You can place the crocks inside, or you can use an automatic water system. The automatic water systems are really nice when you have a super large setup. At my dad's house, he has quite a few cages. He has an automatic watering system, and it's nice because you don't have to refill the bottles or the crocks every day. And we're lucky enough being in South Texas in the wintertime, we very seldom have to worry about, your water system freezing, but like for Sunday when it might freeze, we're going to make sure that we crack the ends of each one of his automatic watering system so the water's drip so it doesn't freeze in and break any of that up. Even with automatic watering systems, you need to check them once a week or so just to make sure, touch a few of the little watering buttons to make sure that water is coming out, because if your rabbits don't get water, they won't grow. I prefer the water bottles at my house. We only have 12 cages at my house, so it's not a big deal to go in and fill up the water bottles. Sometimes the water bottles tend to leak, so if you notice a water bottle that is empty more often, you might add a second water bottle to it to see if that rabbit needs more water, because sometimes they tend to. Or you might need to check and replace it, because sometimes the little ball on the end, that piece just kind of gets wore out and it just tends to leak. If you have more rabbits, like when we have a mama that has babies and the babies get out of the cage, we do tend to add 1 to 2 more water bottles to it just to make sure there's enough water. And we do check it morning and at night. Usually the water bottle will go like a whole 24 hours unless it's really, really hot weather. As I said earlier, the crocs were my least favorite for water just because they play in them. And then where you place your cages is really important. You need it to be in a well-ventilated area so that the rabbits don't get too hot. It should not be in direct, constant sunlight, because think about it, those poor bunnies have a constant fur coat. So if you left them in direct sunlight, they would die because they would just get too hot. You need to protect them from the elements like rain. Excessive wind. You don't want to have just excessive wind blowing on them. You don't want them to get rained on. So if you don't have like a barn or something to put them in, you should have like some sort of lean-to on there to help keep the rain and sunshine off of them constantly. You don't want your cages placed directly on the ground. You want them, off the ground. I usually recommend at least about 3 foot off the ground. And you should also protect your cages from other animals, such as dogs and cats and things. Dogs like to sniff around the rabbit cages, and sometimes they even like to nip at their feet. And we have seen, a dog get aggressive with a rabbit and they bite their feet and they injure them. It's not a very pretty sight, and it's very painful for the rabbit. And if they even can just get to them and just constantly bark and agitate them, they'll run around the cage and they'll basically just die of a heart attack. So you want to keep in mind, you invested lots of money in this project, so make sure that they are protected from other animals. Another thing that is really important is to know the requirements of the show that you're going to be attending. You need to know, the rules. Some shows allow you to show all kind of different breeds of rabbits. Most of the time, like our county fairs, are meat pen rabbits. Most of them give you the option between a Californian and a New Zealand. And the real difference, New Zealand is a completely white rabbit with no markings on it, and they have red eyes. The Californians are the white rabbits with the black ears, nose, and feet and tail. So, be sure to know what breeds are allowed before you go and purchase. At my house, as I said earlier, we have rabbits year-round. We breed our own rabbits for our fair. I've had a couple of years where I've had to purchase rabbits for my daughters because for whatever reason our rabbits didn't breed and have young, or the young that they had, something happened to them and we lost them. So, it's not always a perfect situation. Most of the people do choose to purchase bunnies from a breeder. Bunnies are not necessarily the cheapest project to purchase. They have been running on average around $50 a bunny. I know this year for some of my kiddos that are trying to secure bunnies for our Wharton County Fair, they've been told $45 to $55 per bunny. Most fairs will give you some kind of limitation on the number of bunnies you can validate. At Wharton County, we can validate up to 10 bunnies per child. So, this is something that you absolutely need to know. At $50 a bunny, 10 bunnies, that's $500. That gets kind of pricey. A lot of people buy 5 bunnies to choose from, to raise and choose from. I don't know why, but I just kind of like the number 6 if you're not going to buy all 10. That way it gives you one more bunny to try to match your 3 when it's time to go and show. You should look for your breeder at least 6 months prior to your show so that the breeder can have bunnies that are the correct age. Most shows, when you're showing rabbits, the age is approximately 70 days. 70-day-old rabbits, so 68 to 75 is usually a decent range for an age for a bunny with that regulation. Some shows are very strict, and when I have sold to some different shows, I was having to give the exact date of the bunnies being born because they said absolutely no bunnies over 75 days old can show at that particular fair. So that's really important. And most people don't know, when you breed a rabbit, it takes 30 to 32 days after they're bred for the bunnies to be born. They have a 30 to 32 day gestation period. So then, of course, once they're born, that starts your count to your 70-day-old bunnies. Make sure that you know all the dates that your entry forms are due, that your tattoo dates or validation dates. Most fairs do tattoo the bunnies just to make sure that everyone is doing things properly. Know what your check-in time and your show date and time is, because if you're late to some of these things, you're just out of luck. So it is definitely a good thing to know and mark your calendars and put reminders in your phone so you don't miss any of the dates. Most of the shows do follow the American Rabbit Breeders Association rules. I'm sure a lot of you heard of the ARBA, which, as I just said, is the American Rabbit Breeders Association. They do have a website, and they give lots of information for you to get on different types of feeding programs, housing, different types of rabbits, because we're talking about 2. But I want to say that I hope I get this right, I think I remember reading that there's like 47 breeds of rabbits that are recognized by the American Rabbit Breeders Association. So there's just lots of good information and tips on that. And most of the judges that come through these shows are ARBA certified. So the information on those websites is information they might even ask you about for showmanship. Now we're going to kind of talk about nutrition. There are several different brands of rabbit feeds and supplements available. I use Purina Show Chow. We've used ACO in the past. We've tried a couple of different feeds. Being that I raise rabbits year-round, I've chosen a feed that works for me and that is convenient for me to get, so that I'm not having to drive 50 miles to pick up my feed, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Since I do keep rabbits year-round. You do, for the show rabbits, want to have a show feed, because they do have, like when you're choosing dog food, they have different types of feed for different types and sizes of rabbits. But you're raising these for meat, pin, and for show, so you want to make sure that you do have a feed that is geared for show rabbits. You want to watch your proteins. 16 to 18% protein in your feed is usually a pretty good amount. It helps the rabbits grow properly and keeps them healthy. I do recommend, when you purchase rabbits from your breeder, that you talk to them about what they feed their rabbits. If you're going to change from a different feed that they feed, you want to ask them for a Ziploc bag of feed so that you can mix the feed and ration it over to your rabbits, to the feed that you're going to feed your rabbits when you get home if it's different, just because sometimes switching from one feed to another feed cold turkey will kind of cause them to have some, tummy troubles and scours. And sometimes if you're not used to that happening with your animal, you can't get them back and get them healthy again, and you might lose them. When you get your bunnies home after tattooing or validating or for the first time, you want to kind of let them sit for a couple of days and just kind of get used to their environment and let them calm down so that they're not stressed. But I recommend about 3 days after you get your rabbits home, you weigh them, and then you weigh them weekly to twice a week for a little while so that you know how to adjust the feed. Most of the time when you get your bunnies home, you're going to keep your bunnies in full feed where they're going to have feed with them 24 hours a day. You don't want to overfill the feeder so that the feed gets old, but you do want to check them to make sure that they have feed, because you're going to get them and they're probably going to be anywhere from 2 pounds to 2 to 3 pounds. And most shows your weight limit is 3.5 to 5.5 pounds. And you definitely want them to get to that 3.5 for sure, but if they're getting close to that 5.5, you're going to have to reduce the feed that you feed them so that they don't go overweight, because weight limits are definitely one of the things at the show that can disqualify you immediately. We're kind of going on to the health now. We were talking about how they grow. That's with the feeding program. You also need to watch your rabbits for ear mites. If you look inside their ears, they can get like little sores or scabs. You don't really see the mite itself. It's like a microscopic little creature, but they can make the ears have sores and make the rabbits just feel bad and not eat as well. It's crazy with ear mites. You can check them and, you can look, and then in 3 days, all of a sudden you've got this one ear on one of your bunnies that's just really crusty and nasty. So they can come on really fast. So you just kind of need to keep an eye on that. You can treat ear mites with medicine that you can get from a vet. We use mineral oil and Campho-Phenique mixed together. We take just the regular size jar of mineral oil, and we dump just a smidge out, and we pour the little bottle of Campho-Phenique in it and mix it up and just drop a little bit in their ears. When you do that, you need to do that for sure 2 weeks before the fair, because you do not want to get any of the mineral oil on the fur of the rabbit, and you don't want to do that right before you walk into the show because it will not allow, it will not come off their fur, and then that'll count against you. You also have to watch for sore hocks. That's basically sore feet on the rabbits. If you do not have the proper cages, the proper size wire on the floor, sore hocks can come up very fast. You don't want to have them on like solid wooden bottoms on the cages because that'll keep all their fecal matter there, and that'll make the feet sore. However, if you do have a rabbit with sore hocks, you can put like maybe a 10 by 10 board or like a tile in there that they could sit on so that they're not on the wire constantly. You just have to make sure that you move it around if you notice that they're using the bathroom on the board, and you may have to put it, because rabbits are kind of a creature of habit. They'll usually pee and poop on one side of the cage versus the other, so just pay attention if you have to put a board in for that. You can also watch, a lot of times their eyes will get matted. That may not be a problem that you have if you purchase a bunny, because a lot of times the breeder won't sell one if it is, but if you breed your own bunnies, they could get poked in the eye with a piece of hay that's in their nest box or something, and it just it kind of is similar to when, as a person has a cold and your eyes just get all the sleepies or the eye boogers in there, and sometimes they get matted. If that does happen, you want to clean it as many times a day as you can, and you can get like just a regular eye drop and put in there, and that'll help. And if it's like really sore, you can take just a little bit of the Neosporin ointment and rub across the eye. Sniffles or snuffles or a cold is something that a rabbit can get. If you look at your rabbit and it's sneezing, you don't have to be alarmed, because sometimes there's just funk in the air that make you and me sneeze as well, and it can do the same thing to the bunny. But if your rabbit sneezes a lot and it has discharge, like white discharge or yellow discharge from its nose, that is something to be concerned about. You need to contact your breeder or a vet immediately. If your rabbit has the sniffles or a cold, it will not be allowed. It will disqualify you from being able to show. That's a send you home immediately. Please take your rabbits away from all the other rabbits around here and go home kind of thing. If you're not sure if the difference is your rabbit's just sneezing because of maybe something in the air, if it's a cold, think of a rabbit like a little kiddo. In the wintertime when they've got a runny nose, the first thing they do is take the sleeve of their jacket and rub it across their nose. So if you look at the inside of their front paws, if you notice that that's matted, then you need to be concerned, because that's usually a sign that they have a cold or the sniffles or snuffles. So as your rabbits are growing, once you get them home, you know, you're going to weigh them once a week, twice a week, closer to your show date. You're going to weigh them maybe every other day. And if you have that rabbit that just loves food and he or she is right at that 5.5 pound mark, you might be weighing them on a daily basis just to make sure. A lot of times we recommend, so you can keep track of your bunnies that you're weighing, in the ear opposite of the tattoo, you can just take a permanent marker and write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or A, B, C, D, E. So that way, as you're recording their weight, you know that you're weighing the same rabbit and stuff, especially if you don't have them in separate pins. If you have them in separate pins, you know which bunny is which. A lot of, like I said, I keep mine usually with the mom, unless I get some that are just getting close to the weight, then we'll separate them out into their own cage. A lot of people do prefer to keep them in separate cages and feed them up. They feel like they can control it more. Some people, especially if your rabbits are smaller and not gaining, sometimes it's good to have more than one in a cage because they compete for their food. So they'll kind of be like, no, get out of my way, this is my food. And then they'll eat more because they have to compete with someone to eat, and that'll help them gain weight. If your rabbits are overweight or getting close to being overweight, you can hold them on just plain old crimped oats. You want to make sure that they have water, because if you take a rabbit off of water, it'll get soft. And when you touch a rabbit, it's supposed to be firm. But if you're getting overweight or close to that weight limit, you can drop it down to where you're giving it a pinch of rabbit pellets and the majority of just it could be a whole oat or a crimped oat. I like the crimped oats just because if they fall out of the rabbit feeder, you don't have a patch of oats growing under your feeder that you have to mess with all the time. You can give supplements like Show Bloom to a rabbit, and they have Show Bloom for rabbits. If you do Show Bloom, you kind of have to watch it, because Show Bloom, some bunnies will prefer to eat Show Bloom over the feed, and you need to have them eat their feed because the feed has all of the nutrition they need, and the Show Bloom is just kind of like a vitamin probiotic that'll help them a little bit. But I would talk to your breeder and see what's going on, or a leader in your area that's been experienced with rabbits before you start messing with your feeding program. But the oats are definitely a great way to hold them if their weight is close to or over the weight limit. Feeding them just oats instead of rabbit feed right at the end will help bring your weight, can help bring your weight back down, unless it's just way over. When you're before you start picking your pin of 3 rabbits, you do need to make sure that your teeth are okay. The rabbit teeth should they should not be broken or anything like that, and they should close, where the top goes over the bottom just a little bit. If they're different, where bottom over the top, or they're super crooked, that can disqualify you. When you're looking for your selection of your pin of 3 rabbits, you want to be able to touch each rabbit, and to your hands, it's supposed to feel the same. You don't want one with a big butt and a narrow butt and then a medium-sized butt, because that's 3 different rabbits. You don't want to choose your best. You've got this one rabbit in your pen of, say, 6 that is just perfect. It's everything you want in a rabbit. You may have to leave that rabbit at home, because if you put that rabbit with 2 that aren't quite as good, you don't have a pen of 3 that match. and that will take you out, and the judge will be like, you had one excellent rabbit and two that were lacking across the loin or lacking across its hindquarters or something. So you would be better off having three alike rabbits that aren't perfect than one perfect and two that match. Matching doesn't mean that each rabbit has to weigh 5 pounds 2 ounces, but yet you don't want one that's 3.5 pounds, one that's 4 pounds, and one that's 5.5 pounds, because those rabbits, when you touch them, will not be alike. So if you closed your eyes and you felt that rabbit, and then somebody flipped the rabbit and you felt the next one, and you felt the next one, you want it to feel like you're touching that same exact rabbit. And that's how you pick your pin of 3. And then you want an alternate that you bring with you. You would take that just a cotton ball or a paper towel with some alcohol and wipe out your markings for, your weights, your ABCs or 1, 2, 3s if you did that. And you would just take that magic marker and put an A in that ear. The reason that you bring an alternate, if you have one, is in case as you're transporting from home to the show, one of the rabbits gets nervous and breaks a claw, one of its toenails or whatever, and it's bleeding. You need to put the alternate in, because a broken toenail could be means for disqualification, and you have to make that decision usually before you get to that judge for weigh-in, because a lot of times they may let you bring your alternate in if they see something, or they may not. That'll be the rules of the show that you need to check on. This next slide is a picture of the rabbit. This is like a super awesome picture for everyone who's raising rabbits to have. It tells you what everything's called and where it's located. If you're talking to your breeder or to a vet, if you have a problem with the rabbit and you're talking to them, you can tell them exactly where it is, and everybody's on the same page and they understand. I know that when you got to showmanship, when my girls were young, they would ask them, the judge would ask them, show me where the loin is on the rabbit. Well, as you can see, the loin on this rabbit, if I can make my little pointer go, is, kind of from mid-back over the hump, kind of halfway through the hind quarter. So I would definitely, and this is just an image that I Googled, and we found it, and we've saved it for years. This one I did not go back to see if you could Google it and find it on the internet like I did a few of the other pamphlets that I'll talk about after a while. But this is definitely one to take a picture of and to know, because like you can tell that your hocks are kind of on the back feet, on the back legs over here, and the soreness would be kind of right here, if you can see my pointer moving, kind of right where that arrow is from the hock. So this is just, like I said, this is something the kids need to know, especially if they're going to do showmanship. And that brings us to showmanship. So when I was a 4-H'er, we didn't get to do rabbit showmanship like they do now. You just showed your rabbit. Your judge spoke to you as he was judging. He would ask you a question, here or there, what kind of feed did you feed, what % protein is in there, or things like that, as he judged us across the table. Now showmanship is a separate little contest within your rabbit contest. And this is where you get to showcase your knowledge, what you know about your rabbit project. Believe it or not, there is so much information about rabbits. It's amazing. You also need to know how to handle your rabbit properly. Your pet little rabbit, Gus over here, you might grab him like he's your puppy or your kitten and flip him over in your hand and rub his belly. Well, we do not want to walk up to the judge's table for showmanship with our rabbit flipped over, rubbing his tummy. Being that you can handle it that way is cool and all, but that's not proper ways to carry your rabbit. You want to carry it kind of like a football and set it on the table. Being that we're virtual, it's really, really hard for me to explain showmanship. There are lots of videos that you can Google for showmanship. as you're doing your showmanship, if you kind of pay attention to how the judge has judged rabbits in the past, basically you're judging that rabbit and you're explaining to him how you're judging that rabbit and what you're looking for when you look at the parts of the rabbit. The deal that says guideline for Texas 4-H rabbit showmanship, and it's the link, if you want to write it down, is rabbit showmanship guide for ky.pdf. That link is there. But if you just Google, and I went back and this is something I've had saved in my computer for many years. But I did go back and Google it and just typed in the name guidelines for Texas 4-H rabbit showmanship. And it did come up to where you can get to it. The ARBA has some really nice showmanship paperwork. They have pictures showing you what to do. But as far as showmanship goes, like I said, you would walk up to the judge. Well, let me take a step back. So it depends on how big your show is. When my kids were younger, they did showmanship because our rabbit show was, you were looking at like maybe 40 youth in the show. So the judge, and not every one of them did showmanship, but the judge would do a one-on-one showmanship with them. Now at Wharton County, our numbers have grown tremendously. We are over 100. I want to say last year we had tattooed 155 contestants in at our show. The last several years, as we've gone over the 100 mark at our show, the judge will set like the kids up on tables. You might have 5 to 7 kids at one time, and he'll say, show me how you would judge the rabbit. And they have to go through all the motions of what they're doing and looking for without explaining it to him. And then he'll pull them aside separately and would ask them 1 or 2 questions and let them go back to the group. So you kind of need to know what size your show is and how your judge does showmanship. But for the most part, showmanship is the same whether you're doing it individually or in a group. The difference with individually is you'll be talking through it. When you're in the group, you won't be talking through it. Or in a group, he may say, show me how you would check your rabbit's ears for ear mites, and then the kids on the group would do that. But you'll carry your rabbit properly. You'll set it down. You should start by checking their ears. When you're checking it to make sure that your tattoos are proper, that they're free of ear mites, that there are no tears or missing portions of the ears. Then you're going to flip your rabbit over. And sometimes that's tricky, especially for the younger kids, because the rabbit's a little big, but you don't want to catch it just by the ears. So you'll have to work with the kiddo, and this is something I absolutely cannot show you virtually. But the way you'd catch the rabbit to flip it over, so you could pull it against your tummy or lay it on the table and kind of have it touching your tummy, just to give the rabbit some security when you have it flipped over. But when you turn it over, then you're going to check the teeth, you're going to check the eyes, you're going to check the nose. You're checking the eyes to make sure that it's not blind, that the eyes match, because a Californian is supposed to have red eyes, even though it has black on it. And if it has a red eye and a black eye, that means that it's not a pure breed. And of course, that would be a disqualification. And if you're able to talk through the showmanship when you do it, you're explaining this to the judge as you're doing it. You're checking the teeth to make sure, that there's no defects such as malocclusions or broken or missing teeth. You would do that by taking your thumb and index finger and kind of pulling back on their mouth so you can see the teeth. You're going to check the nose to make sure that there's no signs of a cold, no white nasal matter. And then at that point, you would also check, as we talked about with the sniffles and a cold earlier, the inside of their front legs to make sure that there's no matting present, which indicates that they could have a cold. Then you'll check their toenails. You can take your thumb and kind of push it into their paw, and that brings up all of their little claws, and you'll check for that. And you also want to make sure that you mention the dew claw if you're able to talk about it, and make sure that your toenails are all the right color, because discolored toenails can be disqualifications. You'll check the front feet that there's no sores on them, and then the hocks that they have no sores, infections, or bleeding. You'll check their legs, their front legs, to make sure that they're straight, and also the back legs so that they're straight and they lay properly. You'll rub your hand across like the belly of the rabbit to make sure that there's no abscesses or tumors. And then, of course, you'll sex your rabbit. And then you'll check the tail to make sure that the tail is there, that it's straight, that it's not broken. And also, one thing that we've learned about the tail, so the tail on a Californian, the tail has to be colored all the way around. If it's like white on the bottom and black on the top, we had a judge one year that disqualified and sent people home because the tail was on the bottom of the tail, it was not gray or black. It was white, and they said that that was not a purebred Californian, and therefore it could not compete in the show. So that's why it's important to know your judge and know what they're looking for too. Then you would flip your rabbit back over, and you would set your rabbit up properly. You would make sure that there's no, form spots or sores or anything on the outside of the rabbit. You would run your hand on the rabbit to show them that the quality of the fur, and that it's clean. And you would pose your rabbit when you're through with showmanship and have it sit there. And of course, with any showmanship, you're also judged on your personal appearance. So you want to wear nice show clothes when you do your showmanship. And as I said, there's like the ARBA site actually has pictures of how to do some of this stuff on there when you go under the showmanship area. And the next part of showmanship is like the question answer section. There's the bottom one, the 4-H showmanship question and answer guide, is actually a pretty cool guide to go through, but you can Google rabbit showmanship questions, and you can just learn lots of facts. They may ask questions that are trick questions. One question they may ask, like a junior, is how long should a rabbit's ears be? Well, there really is no specific length. You don't measure the rabbit's ears, and if it's, that they shouldn't be 3 inches long, and if they're not 3 inches long, you don't take them. So that's kind of one of those trick questions that kind of stump them. But then they may, they ask, like, can you show me how to check for ear mites, or can you show me where the loin on your rabbit is, or can you tell me other breeds of meat pen rabbits? So there's things that you want to show. They may ask you how many breeds does the ARBA, consider, or how many different types of breeds are recognized by the ARBA. So, there's just different information you want to know. Can you tell me what a malocclusion is? That's issues with the rabbit's teeth. You want to go into detail where you can describe all the different kind of problems they have with their teeth. So the older you get, the more information they expect you to know, and the more random the question should be. And don't let, as a youth, don't let that question thing freak you out and not want to do showmanship, because you may know that answer and you may be nervous and it just may not come to you. And it's okay to be nervous, because being nervous means that you care and you want to do a good job. So you should be a little nervous, but hopefully you're not so nervous that you can't do what you're trying to do. But showmanship is definitely something that each young person should try. And if you don't know the answer to that question, I guarantee you next year you will, and you'll know an answer to a few more questions, because you'll look a little bit harder and study just a little bit more. So next, I know a lot of people purchase their rabbits, so they don't get to see all the stages of the bunnies. So right here, these little naked pink things, those are probably 1-day-old bunnies right there. So we have a nest box that we put in, and I don't have a good picture of the nest box, but the mama, we just put the hay in the box, and she rearranges the hay to make her nest how she wants it, and she pulls fur. In the wintertime, my nest box has like the hardware cloth bottoms, so that that air can go through there, and you know, any waste like TT or poop and stuff can, well, the poop doesn't fall out for the big rabbits, but for the little bunnies it will, can fall out. But in the wintertime, I cut a cardboard that fits sort of in the bottom of the box so that there's not cold drafts, because it does get cold in South Texas, you know, for like a half a day, and the bunnies aren't used to that, so they could get cold. This next picture, these bunnies are about a week old. You can kind of see their fur starting to come in. They still look naked. Their eyes and their ears are closed when they're babies and they're born, so they can't hear or see. They have to use their sense of smell. At about 2 weeks old, which is right here, their eyes are starting to open up. They've got, you know, a lot of fur. They're just cute and cuddly. This next one that you see on the end here is a mama with the babies out of the box. I like to take this board and put it in there when I get the babies out of the box, just because their little feet can kind of fall through the wire. We do have our barn closed up where, you know, animals shouldn't be able to get in there, but you just never know. So that way, if something scares them or whatever, they can sit on the board, and, you know, kind of get off the wire if there's something that's a threat to them, and they can't bite their feet and pull them through the wire, because it will happen. It has happened, and it's not very pleasant. But those are just some bunnies that have started jumping out of the box. Once they jump out of the box, you want to take them out of the box so that the hay doesn't poke their eye, or they don't get any kind of bacteria in their eyes, and they don't mat up, because that does end up with a disqualification. This is just a cute little picture. One of my girls playing with the bunny, holding it upside down, rubbing its belly, and going to sleep. That's not how you want to carry your bunny when you see the judge. And this is actually a picture of my youngest daughter, Leslie, in the sale ring at our fair. So that's where everyone hopes that they end up, is in the sale ring, getting rewarded for all your hard work. And even if you don't make the sale and have to go to the freezer sale, don't get down. The fact that you tried is super awesome, and that makes you a winner as well. So, are there any questions?